The Complete History of the Roman Empire, A Journey into Profound Rest. Part 1. The First Breath of a City, Myth, Monarchy, and the Echoes of Etruria. Settle in and let your consciousness drift back through the long, quiet corridors of time, to a world where history and legend are woven together in a beautiful, ancient tapestry. Our journey begins not with the clamour of war, but with the gentle, rhythmic cadence of myth, the soft, murmuring heartbeat of a civilization that would one day shape the world. Imagine a time of wild, untamed land, where the only sounds are the rustle of leaves and the gentle flow of a river. This is the world into which our story is born. The legend, a lullaby whispered through centuries, tells of two brothers, Romulus and Remus, sons of the god Mars and Rhea Silvia, a Vestal virgin. They are cast adrift in a wicker basket on the currents of the Tiber River. A quiet act of abandonment that becomes a promise of a new destiny. The river, in a moment of sublime mercy, carries them to the foot of the Palatine Hill, a place of gentle slopes and ancient caves, where a sacred fig tree offers a quiet haven. There, a she-wolf, a creature of primal instinct, discovers them and, with an act of pure, unadulterated kindness, suckles them, nourishing them with her wild milk. She is a symbol of what Rome would become, a fierce, tenacious and protective entity. A shepherd, Faustulus, later finds them and, with his wife, raises them as his own sons, teaching them the skills of the land and the ways of a simple, rugged life. They grow strong and charismatic, natural leaders, a testament to their miraculous beginnings. As adults, in the year 753 CE BCE, a date held sacred by the Romans for 1,000 years, they decide to found a new city where they were saved. But a quiet rivalry, a whispered tension over where to build and who would rule, erupts into a moment of tragic finality. They turn to augury, observing the flight of birds to discern the will of the gods. Remus sees 6 vultures from the Aventine Hill, but Romulus, from the Palatine Hill, sees 12. A dispute over the meaning of the signs, a quarrel over a trench dug by Romulus to mark his city's boundaries, and in a fit of ambition and rage, Romulus slays his brother. He names the city Roma after himself. This foundation, steeped in fratricide, foreshadowed the internal strife and brutal ambition that would both define and ultimately destroy the city. Beneath the shimmering veil of myth, the early history of Rome was a more grounded, though no less compelling story. It was a humble settlement on a natural strategic crossroads, a gentle cluster of villages on the famous 7 hills. The Palatine was the first hill settled, a place of quiet beginnings. The Capitoline, with its 2 peaks, would become the religious and political heart of the city, crowned by the temple of Jupiter Optimus Maximus. The Aventine would become the home of the common people. The city's location, near a ford in the Tiber, and a place where a small island in the river made crossing easier, made it a natural trading hub, a place where people and ideas could meet and mingle, and it was strategically positioned to control the trade routes of the Italian peninsula. This earliest period, the Roman kingdom, was an era of steady if slow growth, under a series of 7 kings. Each king added a new layer to the city's identity. The first was the mythical warrior king Romulus himself, who established the Senate and the First Legions, and oversaw the infamous rape of the Sabine women, an event that led to the integration of the Sabine people into Rome. The second, Numa Pompilius, was a man of peace and deep piety, who established Rome's foundational religious customs and institutions, including the powerful College of the Pontiffs and the sacred Vestal Virgins, whose perpetual fire was a symbol of Rome's eternal life and prosperity. He is said to have held quiet conversations with the goddess Etruria, who guided him in matters of religion and law. Tullus Hostilius was a warlike king who expanded Rome's territory by conquering the neighbouring city of Alba Longa, while Ancus Marcius focused on public works and commerce, founding the port of Ostia at the mouth of the Tiber. Later, under the influence of the more advanced Etruscan civilization to the north, Rome saw a new era of urban development. Kings like Tarquinius Priscus drained the Forum area and began construction of the Circus Maximus, the great chariot racing arena. He introduced Etruscan architectural forms, including the use of the arch and the practice of divination. It was under the Etruscan kings that Rome transitioned from a collection of villages into a true city. The final king, Lucius Tarquinius Superbus, Tarquin the Proud, was a dark shadow, a man of immense power but no moral compass. His rule was not one of gentle guidance, but of cruel oppression, his tyranny a stark contrast to the quiet dignity the Romans valued. His son Sextus's abhorrent act against the noble woman Lucretia, a woman celebrated for her virtue, was the final insult, a wound that could not be healed. The people, their patience exhausted, rose in a quiet but firm revolution. This uprising was not just a political act, it was a profound psychological transformation. This revolution, led by the noble Lucius Junius Brutus, was a moment of deep resolve. They cast out the king, and, in a moment of collective resolve, swore an oath to never again be ruled by a single man. The title of Rex, or king, became a word of scorn and revulsion, a sentiment that would echo through the centuries, a powerful ideal that would shape their political destiny. From the ashes of this rebellion, a new form of government was born, a system designed to prevent the concentration of power and to ensure the people's voice, however quiet, would be heard. This was the Roman Republic, a delicate and intricate system born of a deep-seated fear of tyranny. Part 2. The Republic's quiet struggle for balance, and the conflict of the orders. The Roman Republic was a complex and intricate dance of power, a delicate mechanism designed to diffuse authority. At its heart was the Senate, a council of elders composed of patricians, the hereditary aristocracy. Though not a legislative body in the modern sense, its moral authority and vast experience in matters of state were immense. Its decrees were advisory, but they were almost always followed, a quiet force of tradition and influence. Executive power was held by two annually elected officials, the consuls. They commanded the army, presided over the Senate, and had the power of imperium, or the right to command, to prevent any one consul from becoming too powerful. Each held the power to veto the actions of the other. In times of extreme emergency, a dictator could be appointed for a maximum of 6 months to hold absolute power, a measure meant to be temporary, a gentle pause in the Republic's constant conversation. The people, the ordinary citizens, exercised their power through a series of assemblies where they could vote on laws, elect magistrates, and declare war. It was a beautiful and often contentious system of checks and balances. The early Republic was not a time of serene unity. It was a period defined by the conflict of the orders, a long, slow conversation between the patricians and the plebeians, the common people. The plebeians, who formed the backbone of the army and the economic engine of Rome, were a quiet but powerful force. They demanded a greater say in the government, which was dominated by the patrician elite, and they fought for their rights in a struggle that unfolded over 2 centuries, not with grand battles, but with the quiet, persistent pressure of a people demanding their rights. The plebeians were not an unorganized rabble. They were a community with their own leaders, and their own sacred hill, the Aventine. Their most powerful weapon was the sesile plebes, a mass withdrawal of the plebeians from the city, effectively halting all work and military activity. This quiet but powerful protest led to the creation of the tribune of the plebs, an official whose person was considered sacred and who had the power to veto any action by a magistrate or the Senate that was harmful to a plebeian. It was a victory for the common man, a quiet promise that their voice would be heard. Their struggle culminated in the publication of the 12 Tables in 451 BCE. Before this, Roman law was an oral tradition, known only to the patrician priests, who could manipulate it for their own benefit. Imagine the profound relief of a common citizen, seeing the laws that governed his life, once the sole possession of the privileged, etched on bronze tablets and displayed in the forum for all to see. It was a quiet triumph, a gentle promise of a fairer, more transparent Rome, laying the foundation for modern Western law. This period also saw the rise of the plebeian assembly, the concilium plebis, which had the power to pass laws that, by 287 BCE, and the passage of the Lex Hortensia, were binding on all Romans, patrician and plebeian alike. This peaceful resolution of class conflict, achieved through patient negotiation rather than civil war, was a testament to the Republic's unique ability to adapt and evolve, a gentle strengthening of its social fabric. Part 3. The gentle unfurling of Roman power and the crucible of the Punic Wars. With its internal structure a bit more settled, the Republic's gaze turned outward, a slow, steady expansion of influence. The legions, with their impeccable discipline and unyielding courage, began to conquer their neighbours in the Italian peninsula. They fought a series of wars against the Samnites, a tough mountain-dwelling people, and the Etruscans, their former overlords. These conflicts, though brutal, were a training ground for the Roman army, honing their skills and discipline. Rome's genius, however, was not simply in conquest, but in its quiet ability to absorb and assimilate. They did not merely conquer, they offered a path to belonging, a promise of a place within the Roman world. By granting varying degrees of Roman citizenship to the peoples they subdued, from full citizenship to citizenship without the right to vote, they built a vast and loyal network of allies. This peaceful integration ensured a constant, gentle flow of manpower for their armies, a key to their future successes. This policy was so effective that by the 3rd century BCE, all of Italy was under Roman control, a quiet, powerful testament to their unique blend of military might and political astuteness. The great crucible for Rome's strength was its long, drawn-out conflict with the city-state of Carthage, a powerful maritime empire on the North African coast. The 3 Punic Wars were a series of tests that would forge the Roman character in the fires of adversity. The First War, 264–241 BCE, was a quiet, grinding struggle for control of the strategically vital island of Sicily. Rome, a land power with no real navy, built a fleet from scratch in a matter of months, famously copying a captured Carthaginian ship. Through sheer determination and a clever boarding device called a corvus, a kind of movable bridge, they turned naval battles into land battles, managed to defeat the formidable Carthaginian fleet, and gained control of their first overseas province. The Second War, 2018–21 BCE, however, was a different story. It brought forth the figure of Hannibal Barca, a Carthaginian general of almost mythical brilliance. Imagine the sight of war elephants, ancient powerful beasts, slowly trudging through the snow-capped Alps, a beautiful and terrifying image. Hannibal inflicted a series of devastating defeats on the Romans, none more so than at the Battle of Lake Trasimene, where he ambushed and annihilated a consular army, and at the Battle of Cannae in 2016 BCE, where he encircled and annihilated a much larger Roman force, killing nearly 70,000 Roman soldiers in a single day. The Roman heart was shaken, but their will was unbroken. They refused to surrender, a quiet testament to their unyielding spirit. The consul Fabius Maximus, known as the Daylayer, adopted a strategy of attrition, quietly harassing Hannibal's forces while avoiding a direct confrontation. Meanwhile, Rome rebuilt its armies, and under the brilliant general Scipio Africanus, carried the war to Africa, forcing Hannibal to return home for his final fateful defeat at the Battle of Zama, where his famous cavalry were defeated by Scipio's own superior forces. The third and final Punic War, 1490–146 BCE, was a short, sombre affair, a brutal siege that ended with the utter destruction of Carthage, famously sealed with the Roman senator Cato the Elder's repeated phrase, Carthago delenda est, Carthage must be destroyed. It was a haunting reminder that Rome, for all its quiet ambition, could also be a force of absolute finality. With Carthage gone, and the Hellenistic kingdoms in the east subdued, Rome was the undisputed master of the Mediterranean, a vast sea of Roman influence. Part 4. The Seeds of Decay, Social Strife and the Tragedy of the Gracchi Brothers. With the dawn of unprecedented wealth and power, the seeds of the Republic's own gentle decay began to take root. The immense wealth and the flood of slaves from conquered territories created a new stark divide between the very rich and the very poor. The small farmers who had formed the backbone of the army and the very soul of the Republic returned home from long campaigns to find their lands ruined or bought up by wealthy landowners who used cheap slave labour. These large estates, known as latifundia, were highly profitable and drove the independent farmer into poverty. Dispossessed and landless, they drifted to the city of Rome, a vast, restless urban poor, dependent on government handouts. The social fabric of the Republic began to quietly unravel. The late Republic was a period of subtle, creeping unrest. Political disputes were no longer settled in the quiet debates of the Senate, but in the tumultuous clamour of the streets. Two brothers, Tiberius and Gaius Gracchus, tried to quietly reform the system, to redistribute public lands to the poor. They were men of genuine conviction, men who saw the quiet suffering of the Roman people and sought to mend the frayed social contract. Tiberius, a popular tribune, proposed a land reform law that would limit the amount of public land a person could own and redistribute the surplus to the poor. His efforts were met with the harsh violence of a frightened elite who saw their power and wealth threatened. In 1330 BCE, Tiberius was beaten to death by a mob of senators and their supporters in the Forum. A decade later, his brother Gaius, who pursued even more sweeping reforms, including a law to subsidize the price of grain for the urban poor, met a similar fate. He was cornered by his political enemies, and rather than be captured, took his own life. This was a quiet turning point, a signal that political differences would now be settled not with words but with bloodshed. A dangerous precedent was set, a dark stain on the Republic's history that would never truly be washed away. Part 5. The Era of Ambitious Generals, and the Final Fading Light of the Republic. The stage was now set for the rise of powerful, ambitious generals who commanded armies more loyal to them than to the state. Gaius Marius, a brilliant general from a humble background, professionalized the army by opening its ranks to the landless poor, creating a fighting force that was personally loyal to him, a source of quiet power he would wield for his own political gain. He was elected consul an unprecedented 7 times, a clear sign of the breakdown of the Republic's traditional rules. Lucius Cornelius Sulla, a ruthless conservative, was the first to march his army on Rome, a chilling and unprecedented act. He seized power, became dictator, and purged his political opponents with a terrifying brutality that further normalized political violence. His public list of enemies to be executed, known as the proscriptions, was a horrifying new tool of political control. The final gentle light of the Republic flickered and dimmed with the rise of the First Triumvirate, a fragile alliance between 3 ambitious men, Julius Caesar, a brilliant general, and a masterful orator, Gnaeus Pompeius Magnus, Pompey the Great, a military hero, and Marcus Licinius Crassus, the wealthiest man in Rome. This alliance, born of ambition and held together by self-interest, was destined to fail. Crassus's death in battle shattered the alliance, and the rivalry between Caesar and Pompey exploded into a final civil war. Caesar, after a decade of conquering Gaul and amassing immense wealth and a loyal army, was ordered by the Senate to disband his legions. He made a final, fateful decision. He crossed the Rubicon River with his legions in 49 BCE, a point of no return, and plunged Rome into its final civil war. As he crossed the small stream, he is said to have uttered the words, "Alea e acta est," the die is cast. After defeating his rival Pompey, he was declared dictator for life. His autocratic rule, though brief, was a clear sign that the Republic's long dream was over. His assassination on the Ides of March in 44 BCE by a group of senators, including his friend Marcus Junius Brutus, was a last desperate attempt to turn back the clock, but the clock could not be turned back. The act of violence only plunged Rome into a new and even more devastating civil war, a conflict between the conspirators and Caesar's heirs, most notably his adopted son Octavian. Part 6. The Golden Dawn of the Empire, the reign of Augustus and the Pax Romana. Out of the ashes of the civil war that followed Caesar's death, a young man of quiet intellect and supreme ambition emerged. His name was Octavian, Caesar's adopted son and heir. A political genius, he slowly, patiently, and with a quiet determination, outmaneuvered his rivals. He formed the second triumvirate with Mark Antony and Marcus Lepidus to hunt down Caesar's assassins, and then, after a long, patient struggle, he defeated his final rivals, Mark Antony and Cleopatra, at the Battle of Actium in 31 BCE. The Mediterranean was his, and Rome was once again unified under a single, unchallenged ruler. In a move of political genius, Octavian did not declare himself king. Instead, in 27 BCE, he formally restored the Republic to the Senate, a soft and gentle act of submission that was, in reality, a masterful show of force. The Senate, in turn, bestowed upon him the title of Augustus, meaning the revered one. He was the princeps, the first citizen, a beautiful fiction that masked his absolute power. This moment is considered the gentle dawn of the Roman Empire. The reign of Augustus, 27 BCE, was a period of profound peace and stability known as the Pax Romana, which would last for 2 centuries. Augustus, in his quiet way, transformed the entire Roman world. He professionalized the army, creating a standing force of loyal soldiers who answered to the emperor alone, not to individual generals, and establishing the powerful Praetorian Guard, the emperor's personal bodyguard. He reformed the tax system, creating a more stable and predictable economy for the vast empire. He established a new bureaucracy, filled with men of talent rather than birthright, to govern the provinces. He also began a monumental program of public works, rebuilding temples, constructing aqueducts, and paving new roads. He famously boasted that he had found Rome a city of brick and left it a city of marble. Under his gentle rule, a golden age of arts and literature blossomed, with poets like Virgil writing the national epic, the Aeneid, a beautiful ode to Rome's destiny, and the historian Livy chronicling Rome's history in his monumental work, Ab Urbe Condita, from the founding of the city. Augustus's reign was a time of gentle restoration, a quiet mending of the social and political fabric of Rome after a century of civil war. He famously documented his own achievements in his Res Gestae Divi Augusti, a public inscription that carefully framed his rule as a restoration of order and traditional Roman values. Part 7. The Julio-Claudians and the Flavians, From Madness to Marble. The Julio-Claudian dynasty, founded by Augustus, ruled for the next 5 decades, while emperors like the reclusive and efficient Tiberius and the scholarly and administrative Claudius continued Augustus's work. Others, like the tyrannical and eccentric Caligula and the artistic megalomaniacal Emperor Nero, were remembered for their cruelty and debauchery. Caligula famously tried to make his horse a consul, and Nero, a man of quiet artistic sensibilities, but a terrifyingly cruel streak, is said to have fiddled while Rome burned, a myth born from the devastating Great Fire of 64 CE, which he used as an excuse to build his extravagant golden palace, Domus Aurea. The dynasty ended in 68 CE with Nero's forced suicide and another civil war, a tumultuous Year of the Four Emperors. But from this chaos a strong pragmatic general named Vespasian emerged, restoring order and stability. He established the Flavian dynasty and began the construction of the magnificent Colosseum, a monument that would become the quiet heart of Roman public life. It was a political masterpiece, a massive gift to the Roman people, built on the land of Nero's palace that helped to cement his family's legitimacy. His son Titus was a popular emperor, remembered for his generosity during the eruption of Mount Vesuvius in 79. Part 8. The Peak of the Empire, the 5 Good Emperors and the Antonine Age. The empire reached its serene zenith during the Nerva-Antonine dynasty, 96 to 192 CE, an era of the 5 Good Emperors. This was a period of stability and peace unique in Roman history. Instead of the throne being passed from father to son, these emperors chose their successors, based on competence and virtue. Under Trajan, a brilliant military commander, and the first emperor from a province, Spain, the empire reached its greatest territorial extent, a vast peaceful dominion stretching from the mists of Britain to the sun-drenched banks of the Euphrates River. His famous victories in the Dacian Wars, chronicled on Trajan's column, brought immense wealth to the empire. His successor, Hadrian, was a different sort of emperor, a man of quiet reflection and deep Hellenistic sympathies, who saw the limits of Roman power. He focused not on conquest, but on consolidation and defence, famously commissioning the construction of Hadrian's Wall in northern Britain, a tranquil and solid line marking the gentle edge of the Roman world. He also rebuilt the Pantheon, a marvel of peaceful architectural perfection. The last of these good emperors, Marcus Aurelius, was a philosopher king, a man of quiet strength, who defended the empire from invasion, while composing his personal journal, Meditations, a book of serene wisdom that has comforted souls for nearly 2 millennia. The long, gentle slumber of the Pax Romana came to an end with the death of Marcus Aurelius in 80. His reign was marked by the beginning of a new era of challenges, including the Antonine Plague, likely smallpox, which swept through the empire, killing millions and severely weakening the army and economy. His son and successor, Commodus, was a ruler of vice and vanity, a man more interested in fighting as a gladiator in the arena than in governing the empire. His assassination plunged the empire into a new cycle of instability and strife. The quiet, gentle decline of the Western Roman Empire had begun. Part 9. The whispering rhythms of daily life. Now let us turn our attention to the quieter, more intimate details of Roman life. Close your eyes and imagine the sounds of a Roman day. The distant rumble of wooden cartwheels on cobblestones, the soft murmur of conversation in the forum, the gentle lapping of water in the public baths. Life in Rome was a complex and beautiful tapestry, woven with threads of social class, daily routine and communal life. Roman society was a strict but intricate hierarchy. At the top were the patricians, the old noble families who lived in magnificent villas on the hills. Below them were the equestrians, a class of wealthy businessmen and landowners who formed the backbone of the empire's economy. The vast majority of Roman citizens were plebeians, a diverse group of merchants, artisans, and labourers. And at the very bottom, a silent and crucial presence were the slaves, who made up a significant portion of the population. They performed a wide range of tasks, from back-breaking agricultural labour to tutoring the children of the elite. Their existence was a complex and often brutal reality of Roman life, a silent engine that powered the entire empire. The day for most Romans began at dawn. A light breakfast of bread, maybe some cheese or fruit, would be eaten. The morning was the time for work, for business, and for legal affairs. The poor lived in multi-story apartment buildings called insulae, which were often cramped, noisy, and dangerous. Fires were a constant threat, and the buildings were often poorly constructed. The wealthy, by contrast, lived in magnificent homes known as domus, with peaceful inner courtyards and intricate mosaic floors. The city itself was a chaotic but vibrant metropolis, a bustling maze of narrow streets where the sounds of vendors and the clamour of crowds were a constant presence. The afternoon was the time for leisure and relaxation. The public baths thermae were the heart of Roman communal life. These were not simply places to get clean, they were social centres, places to exercise, to gossip, to debate, and to relax. Imagine the serene atmosphere of a Roman bathhouse, the gentle steam rising from the hot pools, caldarium, the quiet conversation in the warm room, tepidarium, and the refreshing shock of the cold pool, frigidarium. It was a place of quiet democratic equality, where people from all social classes could mingle in a shared, tranquil space. Public entertainment was a cornerstone of Roman life, a policy famously known as bread and circuses, panem et circenses. It was a way for the emperors to keep the large, restless urban population content and distracted. The most popular spectacles were the chariot races at the Circus Maximus, a massive arena that could hold over 150,000 spectators. Imagine the rhythmic beat of 1,000 hooves, the excited cheers of the crowd, the colourful tunics of the charioteers, a blur of motion and energy. Equally captivating, though far more brutal, were the gladiatorial games in the Colosseum, a grand amphitheatre that could hold 50,000 people. These spectacles, while violent, were highly ritualized events that celebrated Roman virtues of courage, discipline, and honor. They were a powerful symbol of imperial might and a communal experience that bound the Roman people together. Roman religion was a rich and syncretic tapestry, a blend of traditional Roman gods like Jupiter and Mars, with Greek deities and various mystery cults imported from the eastern provinces. Religion was a public matter, a series of rituals and sacrifices performed to ensure the well-being and prosperity of the state. Family life was also a central pillar of Roman society. The paterfamilias, the male head of the household, held immense, often absolute authority over his family. Roman women, while excluded from public life, wielded considerable influence within the home and could own property, a testament to their quiet but profound power within the family structure. Part 10. The Symphony of Roman Engineering and the Unwavering Legions. Let us take a moment to marvel at the sheer genius of the Roman mind, a mind that dreamed not just of conquest, but of permanence and order. The Roman Empire was held together by two things: the power of the legions, and the genius of Roman engineering. The Roman army was not merely a collection of soldiers, it was a well-oiled machine, the most effective and disciplined fighting force of the ancient world. The basic unit was the legion, a force of around 5,000 highly trained infantrymen, supported by cavalry and specialized troops. The legionaries were equipped with a gladius, a short sword for close-quarters fighting, a pilum, a heavy javelin, and a scutum, a large curved shield. Their tactics were a quiet masterpiece of discipline and organization. They would march in tight formations, using their shields to create an impenetrable wall, and then, in a moment of synchronized action, thrust their short swords into the enemy. One of their most famous formations was the testudo, tortos, where soldiers would interlock their shields over their heads, creating an armoured shell that was almost impervious to projectiles. This formation, a beautiful and terrifying sight, allowed them to approach enemy fortifications with relative impunity. The legions were also master builders, engineers of a quiet revolution. They were the ones who constructed the vast infrastructure that held the empire together. The most famous of these were the Roman roads, a vast network of paved highways that connected every corner of the empire. These roads were not simple paths. They were a feat of civil engineering, built with multiple layers of gravel, stone, and a foundation of concrete. They allowed for the rapid movement of armies, imperial couriers, and merchants, a circulatory system that kept the vast body of the empire healthy and functioning. The famous phrase, "all roads lead to Rome," was a quiet truth, a testament to the centrality of the city to the entire Roman world. Roman aqueducts were another triumph of engineering, a quiet, flowing testament to their ingenuity. These intricate systems used the gentle force of gravity to transport fresh water from mountain springs to cities, supplying public baths, fountains, and private homes. The Pont de Garde in southern France, a triple-tiered aqueduct with a majestic, tranquil beauty, still stands today as a silent testament to the genius of Roman engineering. But perhaps the greatest Roman innovation was concrete, opus cementitium. By mixing a volcanic ash called pozzolana with lime and water, the Romans created a remarkably strong and durable cement that could even set underwater. This allowed them to construct massive, complex structures like the Dome of the Pantheon, a temple in Rome with an unsupported concrete dome that remains the largest of its kind to this day. The Pantheon, a marvel of peaceful architectural perfection, stands as a symbol of Rome's enduring genius. The use of concrete, along with their mastery of the arch and the vault, allowed Roman architects to build on a scale previously unimaginable, creating structures of immense grandeur that were also symbols of quiet permanence. Part 11. The Long Sunset, Crisis, Division, and the Quiet Collapse. The long, peaceful afternoon of the Roman Empire was coming to a close. The death of Marcus Aurelius in 1880 CE marked the beginning of a period of profound anxiety and instability. The 2 centuries that followed known to historians as Late Antiquity, were a time of slow but inexorable decline for the Western Empire, a long quiet sunset that would eventually lead to darkness. The crisis of the 3rd century, 235–284 CE, was a brutal interlude, a period of chaos that nearly tore the empire apart. In a span of just 50 years, over 20 emperors rose and fell, their reigns short and often violent. The army, once a source of stability, was now a source of constant civil war, with different legions raising their own commanders as emperors. The empire's borders, particularly the Rhine and Danube rivers, were under immense pressure from a new wave of barbarian invasions. The Sasanian Empire, a powerful new Persian state, rose in the east to challenge Rome's authority. The economy, battered by constant warfare and the debasement of currency, collapsed into hyperinflation. The once mighty empire was on the verge of total collapse. But once again, a strong leader emerged to pull Rome back from the brink. The Emperor Diocletian, 284–305 CE, was a man of immense organisational skill. He understood that the empire was simply too vast and complex for one man to govern. He implemented the Tetrarchy, a system of 4 rulers. 2 senior emperors, the Augusti, ruled the east and the west, each with a junior emperor, a Caesar, who would eventually succeed them. This system successfully restored stability, but it also formalized a division of the empire that had been a reality for decades. Diocletian also implemented a series of sweeping economic and military reforms, creating a more professional and mobile army and trying to stabilize the economy. The Tetrarchy eventually fell apart, as new civil wars erupted over succession. From this chaos, a new figure rose to prominence, Constantine the Great, 306–337 CE. His victory at the Battle of the Milvian Bridge in 312 CE was a pivotal moment. Legend says he saw a vision of a Christian symbol in the sky and had it emblazoned on his soldiers' shields. His victory led him to issue the Edict of Milan in 313 CE, which legalized Christianity and ended centuries of brutal persecution. This single act changed the spiritual landscape of the Roman world, setting Christianity on a path to becoming the dominant faith of the empire. Constantine also made another momentous decision, moving the capital from Rome to the ancient Greek city of Byzantium, which he renamed Constantinople. This new Rome was a strategic and economic powerhouse, and it cemented the growing importance of the eastern half of the empire. The final and permanent division of the empire came in 395 CE, upon the death of Emperor Theodosius I. The empire was split between his 2 sons, and the 2 halves, the Western Roman Empire and the Eastern Roman Empire, which would become the Byzantine Empire, would never be reunited. The Western Empire, with its capital eventually moved to the more defensible city of Ravenna, was now a shadow of its former self, its government riddled with corruption, and its armies filled with mercenaries with little loyalty to Rome. The economy was in shambles, and the population, weakened by plagues and crushing taxes, was shrinking. The final act of the Western Roman Empire was a long and agonizing process. Pressured by the terrifying advance of the Huns under Attila, a wave of Germanic tribes, including the Visigoths, the Vandals and the Franks, crossed the Roman frontiers. In 410 CE, the Visigoths under King Alaric marched on Rome and for the first time in centuries sacked the Eternal City. This event, a profound psychological blow, shattered the myth of Roman invincibility. The Vandals followed, sacking Rome again in 455. The empire continued to crumble, its authority and its territory shrinking with each passing year. The end came in 476 CE. A Germanic chieftain named Odoacer deposed the last Western Roman emperor, a young boy named Romulus Augustulus, and sent the imperial regalia to the Eastern emperor in Constantinople. It was a quiet, almost anticlimactic end to 1,000 years of history. The Western Roman Empire was no more. Its vast lands were now a collection of independent Germanic kingdoms, ruled by barbarian kings who had once been Roman subjects. Part 12. The Eternal Echoes of Rome. The sun has set on the Western Roman Empire, but its light was too brilliant to simply fade away. The Roman legacy is not a memory in a history book. It is a quiet echo in our modern world, a foundation upon which Western civilization was built. First, there is the legacy of law and government. The principles of Roman law, as codified in texts like the Justinian Code, form the basis of many modern legal systems. The idea of the rule of law, the concept of civil rights, and the framework of a republic are all rooted in Roman jurisprudence. Our very political vocabulary, with words like senator and consul, is a direct inheritance from Rome. Then there is the legacy of engineering and architecture. The Roman mastery of concrete, the arch and the dome, allowed them to build structures of incredible scale and durability. The vast network of Roman roads, which facilitated the movement of legions and commerce, still exists in many parts of Europe today. The aqueducts, with their graceful arches, were a triumph of hydraulic engineering that provided fresh water to cities and ensured public health. The majestic ruins of the Colosseum and the silent perfection of the Pantheon still stand today as a testament to their genius. The Latin language is another eternal legacy. It is the mother of the Romance languages: Italian, Spanish, French, Portuguese, and Romanian. Its influence on English and other languages is immense. The works of Roman authors like the poet Virgil, the philosopher Cicero, and the historian Tacitus remain foundational texts of Western literature. The Roman army, with its disciplined legions and its sophisticated tactics, set a standard for military organization and engineering that was not surpassed for centuries. The Roman principles of command, logistics, and siege warfare are still studied by military historians today. Finally, there is the legacy of Roman culture and daily life. The Roman calendar, with its names for the months and its organization of the year, is a direct predecessor of our own. The Roman ideal of public service, of building great works for the common good, is an inspiration to this day. The concept of bread and circuses remains a potent metaphor for the use of entertainment to maintain political control. The fall of Rome was a monumental event, a slow, inevitable process that unfolded over centuries. But the death of the empire was not the death of its spirit. Its ideas, its laws, and its language survived, carried forward by the Church and the new barbarian kingdoms. The quiet echo of Rome can be heard in the halls of our legislatures, seen in the arches of our buildings, and felt in the very words we speak. The story of Rome is a timeless reminder that while physical empires may crumble, the ideas and innovations they leave behind can become truly eternal.